covering the Georgia Bulldogs. Gentry Estes joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Hey, Gentry, Vince Ferrara, Mike Strange. How you doing this morning, Gentry?
Good to be with you guys.
Well, always great to have you, Gentry. And we got to start with that offensive line. What has come out of? Certainly, there's been a lot of movement there. A lot of guys needed to be replaced in eligibility. Take us through that offensive line and where that stands for the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, a couple weeks into preseason, I think they've got 4 of the positions settled up front. Right tackle is still, in their words, an open competition, and I think you're going to see a true freshman there in John Theus. He was a touted prospect they signed, and I think he is going to be that 5th guy. The rest of it was kind of how it looked coming out of spring. You have returning starters at each of the 2 guard positions in Dallas Lee and Chris Burnett. Canarius Gates was a guy who started some games last year, too. He switches out to left tackle. And you have a new center in a true sophomore, David Andrews, who is going to replace Ben Jones, who was a 4-year starter there. So I think there are some questions up front, but I do think the O-line has done a lot better this preseason than it did in the spring. The spring was pretty rough, and they went 1s against 1s in the spring, and you're going against arguably one of the better D-lines in the conference, and they had some issues. But I think this preseason has gone a little better. They haven't been rotating guys around. They haven't been changing positions, so I think there's some continuity now with the ones they do have. But, certainly some question marks.
Gentry, I understand there's a new recruit in the Estes household, so I want to say congratulations on that.
Thank you, Mr. Strange. Appreciate that.
Malcolm Mitchell was just really outstanding last year as a freshman receiver. Really liked him, and I read the other day that he was that he was going to go 2 ways, play some cornerback, but now I read that he hadn't played a snap of offense in camp. Has he been all defense?
He has been. I think that was kind of by plan. Basically, they said that they wanted to get him as many reps as they could at DB because he knows enough to be able to play offense on the fly. I think here in the next week or 2, you'll probably see him get some reps on offense, but not that many. The whole reason for this switch was because Sanders Cummings, the starting cornerback, is suspended for the first 2 games. Bakari Rambo, the safety, was looking at a 4-game suspension. UGA has not confirmed either way how that's going to go after appeal, but it's likely he's going to miss some games too. So they needed, some immediate help in the secondary, and so Mitchell made the move over in the spring. He's playing a lot as a 3rd corner, kind of the slot guy. I don't think he's going to be in that top 2, but I think he is going to play a good bit the first 2 games. And then once they get everybody back, I think you could see him shift a little more to offense as the season goes on.
We're previewing the Georgia Bulldogs with Gentry Estes from Dogs247.com, at Gentry Estes 247 on Twitter. I know you guys are limited in the team stuff you can see, but how have Keith Marshall, Todd Gurley, those freshman running backs, and the rest of the group of running backs, what kind of camps have those guys had?
I think it's been a good camp for Georgia at running back. I think when all that happened with Isaiah Crowell, that I personally thought, as good a player as Isaiah was, I felt like people were, burying Georgia a little too quickly at that position. I knew the kind of players they had coming in and 2 really good recruits, and they've done well. I think that you're going to see the 2 of them play a good bit this year, and they'll probably sort it out during games on the field as far as who kind of takes the lead role between Gurley and Marshall. Gurley's probably had the better preseason at this point. Marshall was the more, highly touted recruit, I guess you'd say, but I think both of them are over 200 pounds. They're physical kids. They both were track stars in high school. I think they've got a lot of tools to be very successful backs in this league, and between them and a returning guy in Ken Malcolm and another in Richard Samuel, I think Georgia will have options at that position. I think that's something everybody really wants to see. They want to see these new running backs and see how they can fit in. And, I think Isaiah, obviously, you'd rather have him, but I think the losing him is going to allow more opportunity for these freshmen right off the bat.
Gentry, Georgia last year, or last couple of years actually, just had great performers, punting and in the place kicking. Some new faces, I guess, this year. Have those battles been decided? Does it look solid or still untested?
Well, it's going to be 2 true freshmen at both spots, probably. They haven't announced a starter at either role, but as of yesterday, Mark Rick said we're repping the freshmen like they're the starters, and I think they're a little hesitant to go ahead and say, okay, you have the job, but I think it will be that. I think it'll be Colin Barber, at punter, a signee, and Marshall Morgan, another signee at kicker. And I think, having seen both of them a little bit, they have big legs. I think Barber's done pretty well with the punting. It should be okay there. Kicker is going to be a little more of a question mark. I think Morgan is again has a big leg. He's shown some range. We've seen him hit a 50-plus yard field goal this preseason, but a little inconsistent maybe with his accuracy. And anytime you have freshmen in those roles, it's going to make fans a little nervous in certain situations. But as you look at it, Georgia has had such a great run at those two positions. But last year you had an experienced senior in Blair Walsh who really struggled for a lot of last year. I mean, he missed kicks in almost every game, and he could have won the Outback Bowl, missed a field goal, and missed some others in key situations. So I'm not so sure they're going to be worse there, but it's just a matter of how much better are they going to be.
Gentry, last thing, real quick, maybe about 30 seconds. Do you view this Georgia team as the favorites in the East, and if so, or if not, why?
Well, I probably do, just because of the schedule. I think that, Spurrier has made such a big deal about the schedules being uneven on the other side of the division, and he's right. South Carolina has a tougher stretch of games on that side than Georgia does, having to play, Ole Miss and Auburn. And I think that South Carolina is not only going to have to beat Georgia, they're probably going to have to take care of business in some other games, too, to be able to do it, which is what they didn't do last year. Whereas I think if Georgia was to beat South Carolina, you can pretty much close the book on it right there. So I think they're favorites, but I will say that South Carolina, they have a very good team. They have probably the two best defensive ends in the nation, and I think that when they play in early October, that's going to be a heck of a game. And it'll be definitely the toughest test that Georgia has seen to that point.
Always excellent coverage of the Georgia Bulldogs at Dogs 24/7, part of the 24/7 Sports Network, and Georgia will be hosting Tennessee September 29th, so you can continue to track the Georgia Bulldogs until then. Hey, Gentry, really appreciate it, as always. Thanks for the time.
Okay, take care, guys.
Thanks, you too. That is Gentry Estes, Dogs247.com, with our preview of Georgia.